Hey, it's Freddie Cruz, and I've made it my job to extract the stories of the individuals, organizations, and businesses that make the greater Houston area great. Enter Vietnam War veteran Raul Herrera. His memoir, Skunk Alpha, was decades in the making. It details an epic battle during the Vietnam War in which his team prevented 90 tons of weapons and supplies from reaching the Viet Cong. During this episode, we discuss how he finally got to the finish line of completing the book, the importance of sharing his story, and how a gift from his mom helped him write it. Pick up your copy now at skunkalpha.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share with family and friends and sign up for the newsletter at cruisethroughhtx.com.
Hi, I'm Ed Sheeran. This is Bruno Mars.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
This is your man Flo Rida with Freddie Cruz.
This is AJ Mitchell with Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Tell your Chico pick Mr. 305 and you already know what it is.
My name is Freddie, and it's time to cruise through HTX. Toward the beginning of the book, Raul, there's a passage that caught my attention. It reads, "The barrio was also the place where I learned the fear of death." And for you, what was that defining moment?
That's an interesting question, Freddie. I was young, high school age, possibly a sophomore or junior. Gone to a girlfriend's birthday party, backyard birthday party with 45 RPM records and such. And the buddies that I went with, the tallest one got permission from my father to use our 52 Chevy. And I went and gathered a bunch of my buds from school. And we went and they got bored with the party right away. And so they wanted to head downtown to see what it was like at one of the dances that were being held downtown in San Antonio. And well, on the way back, they wound up being very nasty with a local gang, the worst gang in San Antonio at the time, the Ghost Town Gang. And of course, they chased them down and they got to where we were and jumped fences and they had guns on us and knives. And well, I thought we were going to die. And so that was the first moment I had with near-death experience. But we survived. Thanks to my girlfriend's mother.
I loved the part about your mom saving the shoeboxes of letters and postcards, and that was really touching. And I want to know the feeling that you had when she presented them to you. Was there one in particular you wrote? You're like, wow, I had no idea that I wrote that or felt that, or was there one that stuck out to you?
No, the idea is the whole box. There may have been two boxes. As it turned out, after I had decided, I had the vision, an epiphany I had been haunted for years with this bosun mate that got killed on December 6th of 67. And he was the influence for me telling our story. And so what happened was that I told my mother, once I came back home, I told my mother I was going to be trying to put a book together and write the story. And she handed me these boxes of letters that I had written. And I put them in chronological order and started dating them, numbering them, 1 through whatever. And the last letter that I wrote home was 79. And that was my boat number, PCF 79. So I found that, this is, read the signs. I'm on the right track here.
Skunk Alpha is not just the name of a book that would make a great rock band name, but it's the retelling of ship-to-ship combat that the world hadn't seen since the Second World War. Can you walk through what you felt, what you encountered that first day that you knew this is it, this is the assignment, we got to report for duty?
Well, what happened was that I knew the mission, and the mission was Swift Boats, Operation Market Time, Task Force 115. It was our job all along the 1,200-mile coast of South Vietnam to provide a barrier, a final line of defense to prevent enemy resupply ships from North Vietnam to bring in their goods to their awaiting Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army regulars. And it happened on July 15th that we captured this enemy ship. We interdicted. It was a 4 U.S. Navy and 3 U.S. Navy and one Coast Guard vessel that provided an intercept. And we were given orders by the commander of the operation. We were closest to shore. We knew the area quite well. We knew where the dangerous outcrops of rocks at the mouth of the Saki River was on Cape Batangan, the Batangan Peninsula. And so we were given orders to proceed, and we attacked it. And we came within 75 yards of each other, exchanging gunfire, machine gun fire. And we managed to, our boatswain mate, our lead petty officer on the fantail of the boat, he trigger fired, hand loaded and trigger fired an 81 millimeter mortar, a white phosphorus round into the trawler's pilot house, forcing it to run aground at the mouth of the Saki River. And it kept 90 tons of ammunition and supplies away from enemy hands.
Okay, so you say the boats were 75 yards away from each other. That actually seems really close for two boats that are firing at one another, and quite hard to miss. So it's just it's astounding that y'all didn't annihilate each other.
Well, interesting enough, we did get hits. They did score hits on us, but no one was injured or wounded from any shrapnel or bullets coming at us. But the other vessel, they got to the point where they knew that they weren't going to be successful in the mission. And interestingly enough, back in October of 21, I was invited to partake in an interview by Hanoi TV. They contacted me. They found me somehow, and they wanted me to tell the story of Skunk Alpha, because they had 3 survivors of that trawler, the crew, the captain of the ship, and 2 crewmen. And I was shocked to find that out. But this particular vessel, once our boatswain hit that round in the pilot house, it was just a target, and it was target practice from all the vessels, even helicopters above that were providing flares to illuminate the trawler, because the vessel came in at the darkness of the moon. So it was pitch black out there. Well, all you saw were the tracers coming at you, and ours going out towards them. But they wound up setting the self-destruct mechanism on a time delay, and they left the vessel, and 3 survived. But unfortunately for us, perhaps the round that our boatswain fired in the pilot house destroyed the mechanism for the delayed charge, and 1,200 pounds of TNT set to scuttle the ship, to blow it up and all its ammunition, mortars, mines, rockets. Had it blown up, we wouldn't be here today talking.
Surprising to me, and I guess, for lack of a better term, getting inside the mind of an enemy. It's the self-destruct mechanism carrying that much weaponry. You would, I guess, and I don't have any military experience, so this is just a noob thinking out loud. But I would think, okay, if someone hits my boat in the wrong way, the self-destruct mechanism might fire off, and then we lose all of our stuff, even if we win the battle, and then our guys aren't going to get our supplies.
Yeah, that's what their mindset was, that they needed to bring supplies to the enemy. And their initial focus had been, North Vietnam's initial focus was to send arms to the Mekong Delta, the southern tip of South Vietnam. And eventually they started moving further north along the coast, and wound up, in fact, there was another trawler that was captured and gunned down just north of where we captured this particular vessel. And that happened just a few months before we got to Vietnam. So we knew we were heading into harm's way for sure. But, you get into the routine of your regular daily patrols, and that was just inspecting fishing junks for documentation, papers, because the enemy moved their soldiers around using the fishing vessels all along the coast, either transporting goods from point to point, or the actual fishermen going from here to there. They would mingle with, they would force these fishermen to take these enemy soldiers along the coast to another location, or carry arms hidden in rice barrels. And so we had to conduct those boring patrols, inspecting day after day after day, and no action. Aside from the fact that when on December the 6th, we did a psychological warfare mission along the My Lai shoreline. Perhaps some viewers may recall in history the My Lai massacre, a sad time for the United States and what happened there. But that was a hot spot, and we were running a psychological warfare mission along the beach, and we got ambushed from 3 bunker positions on the sand dunes. And that's when our boats were made. The one that fired the mortar round, Bobby Don Carver, that's when he was mortally wounded. We lost him that day, a sad day.
And when you talk about psychological warfare, what kind of operation do you mean by that? Are we talking like going out and mingling with the citizenry or something else?
This particular mission involved a speaker team. Psychological warfare would be they would blast this "Give Up Your Arms." It was called Chu Hoi, the Chu Hoi program. Put down your arms. Come over to our side. We'll treat you well. Give up your arms, essentially. Drop your arms. And so, of course, that's like poking a beehive, essentially. They didn't care for it. We ran the beach once and nothing happened. Came around again, and that's when they opened fire on us. But that's what it was. There was a speaker team system. They had speakers on the top of the cabin of the swift boat, and we were running very close to the beach. I was in the pilot house, and I was checking the radar and the photometer to check the water depth, and we had 3 feet, 2 feet. The waves were coming in, so we were riding the swells there along the shore. So we were practically scraping bottom. That's how close we were to the beach. And then we got hit from those hidden positions on the sand dunes.
Can you walk us through that defining moment that you realized that the battle that you were going to win, the battle against Skunk Alpha?
Well, it happened so fast. It was 15 minutes after midnight on July 15th when the actual combat engagement began, and it was short-lived. It was very short-lived. Our gunner, Bob Middleton, up in the pilot house behind the twin 50 caliber machine guns, he silenced the guns on the fantail of the trawler and midships. They were firing at us with anti-aircraft rifles as well. But that allowed us to get closer to the vessel and close enough to allow Carver to be able to, like I said, hand load the mortar and level it and take aim. He actually took aim. There's a scope there on top of the mortar, and took aim and trigger fired that mortar into the round. So we knew we were getting into heavy action, and it was short-lived, as I said. They kept firing at it and lobbing mortars and rockets. The helicopters dropped rockets at it, and explosions happened. But it's amazing that the trawler didn't explode with all that bombardment that was going on to that vessel.
It's no secret that Vietnam War veterans were treated terribly when they came home. What kept you and your fellow servicemen and women optimistic, grounded in the face of being treated like this?
Well, I tell you what, I don't know. My character is strong to the point where I don't let things like that affect me. And yeah, they bothered me, certainly. No one wants to see a welcoming like that. They weren't having their arms open to us and thank you for your service. So that was sad. Emotionally, it was sad. It didn't anger me, but yet, as a matter of fact, there was one occasion I went to make a phone call to have my cousin pick me up at the airport, and I went into this bar and wanted to have a nice, fresh, cold beer, and the bartender wouldn't serve me because I was a Vietnam vet. So those things hurt, and they did hurt, but you move forward, and then you go back into as a matter of fact, after Vietnam, I went and reported for duty. My last tour of duty was in Groton, Connecticut, in the submarine base. And I didn't face any problems after that. And the only problems that I did face, not necessarily from those anti-war protesters, they were mostly my own psychological issues that invaded my psyche. And eventually it took me to the point where it was so grave that I couldn't figure out what was going on. And of course, PTSD wasn't even a name at that time. PTSD was not an issue. It wasn't established. And didn't know who to talk to, and eventually, like I said earlier, I had an epiphany. The idea that my fallen nemesis and mentor, Bobby Don Carver, he was haunting me, and to the point where I finally said, "Well, what's he doing this for?" And it occurred to me that maybe he wants our story told, so that perhaps his children and his grandchildren down the line would know that he was a hero that day.
You had written in the book that you knew you had a story to tell as far back as the 70s, and here we are in 2023. And then you talk about Carver, and I'm wondering if you've got any advice for somebody who has undergone any sort of trauma in their lives, be it military or not in the military. What would your advice be for them to get their thoughts out of their head and onto the paper, or in this case, maybe even into the computer?
Well, that's a good point that you bring up because in addition to my time on being a director and eventually president of the Swiftboat Sailors Association, I'm currently the ambassador for the Houston region for the Military Writers Society of America. And part of the outreach program is to reach out to veterans and their spouses that are interested in learning how to share their story, how to tell their story. And it's a catharsis, and we're trying to generate interest across the United States, not just here in Houston, wherever the Military Writers Society of America exists, to have a free writers seminar for veterans and their spouses that are interested in learning how to put their thoughts on paper, and not necessarily for writing an article or writing a book or writing a movie screen. Just expressing their inner thoughts on paper helps a great deal for those of us that are struggling with issues of war.
And the other thing too is that this could help future generations of your family. You talk about military members and their spouses, and it's for someone who in 2075 wants to learn about grandpa or great great grandpa or whenever they're going to read it, and they want to learn about their family, and they're like, wow, this they went through they struggled, and I'm having a rough day, but I know that if great great grandpa Raul went through this, then I can go through whatever I'm going through today. And so there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. It's cathartic, one, and then two, you're simply doing it for your family, whether or not it's ever going to become a New York Times best-selling book or an article that goes viral.
Well, it certainly is that way because another sideline to putting this story together. It's a memoir, but yet I consider it. Well, some people call it creative nonfiction, others call it narrative nonfiction. Uh, Nonfiction is basically newspaper read, but I decided to put a twist to this and use what's called, perhaps mythically, literary license. And I've given voice to all these characters. And we had a lot of characters on our crew and around the base. And I wanted to bring the characters alive. I wanted to make them come alive in dialogue. And I was able to accomplish that. And I wanted to do that so that people would understand what swift boats were all about, what our mission was, and what our accomplishments was. Many people say that the United States lost the war in Vietnam, but the U.S. Navy won its share of battles through the sacrifice of these sailors. And that's my goal also, is to have the legacy, the swift boat legacy, reach the general public. Not so many people know about what swift boats were. Even some military vets that I associate with at VFW posts, they don't. And I said, "Well, what's a swift boat?" They don't even know what a swift boat was. They were in the war. So I'm trying to change that. Hopefully, the book will reach a good level of interest across the land, and people will find out what swift boats were, because I do cover the history of swift boats from the very beginning, from when the Army helicopter flew over a cove, Vung Bay. He discovered the first trawler, and there had been many, many missions prior to that. History records it already. I note that, how many missions North Vietnam had been successful in bringing goods into the Mekong Delta area up until the time this particular trawler was discovered in Vung Bay. And that was a catalyst. That's what brought to life what was known as Task Force 115, Operation Market Time, and the swift boats.
SkunkAlpha.com is the website where you can learn more about this incredible mission. And again, it was a ship battle that the world hadn't seen since the Second World War. And to hear these stories of these men going out there, fresh out of high school, young men, as a 47-year-old, it's mind blowing to hear of what you all went through, and voluntarily, there was a military draft, yes, but you volunteered, and that cannot be understated. So, sir, thank you, one, for your service, and two, for sharing this story. And you're right, we got to get this out there, and the story of Carver and all these people that you served with. So skunkalpha.com is that website for you to go to get the book, learn more about Raul Herrera. He is in the Houston area. And thank you, sir, for coming by the show.
My pleasure, Freddie. Proud to have served.
Hey, you're not going to make it through the entire episode without me reminding you once again that if you enjoy this podcast, you can help me grow the show by leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform, and by signing up for the newsletter. I can guarantee there will be free stuff involved at some point before the end of summer. So if you want to get in on some freebies, you can sign up at cruzthroughhtx.com, CRUZ through htx.com.